So it is 9:30 and really happy that everybody has taken the time today to be here for the Fire Adapted Communities Learning Network Wood Utilization Community of Practice. My name is Ann Matek, and I am a co-chair of this group of the Wood Utilization COP. And I'm just going to really quickly review the agenda. Becca is taking notes. She is my co-chair, and I'll let her say a little something in a sec. But I just wanted to review the agenda so everybody knew what was going to be happening today. So we're honored today to have Dr. Hans Supan, who is the Director of Forest Operations and Biomass Utilization with the Ecological Restoration Institute, with us today. And we also have his coworker, or used to be his coworker, Jeff Hallbrook. He's a forester and timber training coordinator with the Forest Service Washington office, Business Operations Enterprise. And they're both going to talk today. Okay, that was funny, Becca. Today about a pilot project that they conducted here. I'm in Flagstaff, Arizona, and so is Dr. Hahn here, a place called Camp Navajo near Flagstaff. And the title of their presentation is Chip and Ship, Testing the Logistics of Supplying Wood Chips Over Long Distances Using Intermodal Railroad Transportation. So we're going to let them present for about 30 minutes. We'll have discussion and questions for around 15 minutes. And then the last 15 minutes, we're going to talk about ideas and news, the topics for the July call, and then just a little other business about rescheduling our November call. And then if we have time, we'll go do a little round robin on news or any peer assist. So I really want to thank again Dr. Hahn and Jeff for taking the time to be with us today, and I'm going to hand it over to them, and I'll let Jeff share his screen.
Well, excellent. Yeah, it's nice to, as you're typing in there, I'm looking at different people. It's like, hey, I recognize that person. I recognize that one. So it's great to be here today. My name is Jeff Hallbrook, and Dr. Hahn is on the picture of your screen right below me there. So together we did an exciting project last year, like say at Camp Navajo. And we affectionately called it the Chip and Ship Project. So we're using railroads to send our wood chips to South Korea. Pretty exciting project. So I'm speaking to the choir out there. There's definitely a lack of markets for wood in Western Arizona. You know, we have a lot of wood that's sitting there. We can treat it, but if there's no place for it to go, we have a hard time sending it out to places. And with transportation costs being 50 to 60% of the cost of treatment, it gets really expensive really quick for some low value material. The other one is we have to use the whole tree is really what we're looking at. I should have asked before how to use, are you guys seeing my mouse at all right here?
Yep, we can see it.
You can see the mouse, okay. So, you know, if we utilize the whole tree, I've kind of cut in the deconstructive sampling of the tree here. So these logs of higher value, the 12-inch small end diameter, we have uses for that. They're actually very high uses. They're high value boards, things like that. We can sell those all day long. Then we get into the next log up and we get into the 6 to 12-inch top diameter here, that small end. You know, we can make pallet materials. Ooh, that was a little wild with the mouse. You know, pallet materials, post and pole markets, they're out there, and we can do that. Then we start getting into that really smaller diameter, less than 6-inch top, seasonal landscape markets, those landscape mulch and the chips and pellets, post and pole markets, things like that. We start getting into from high value, we start getting to lower value and lower value, and we really flood the markets with this these logs out there. So it's oftentimes difficult to get rid of these when you're restoring the forest. So where can we send this? And we've had a lot of interest, surprisingly, from the Asian markets. They're using it for energy over there. They're also, looking for our cans, looking for other items that they have, our sawdust, shavings, the torrefied briquettes, pellets. They're really hungry for wood. So that's nice, but how do we get it there? And us in Arizona and Flagstaff, we see these shipping containers going by all the time. And Dr. Hahn and I are sitting there, watching these things go by going, we could use these things. They're going home empty. And we really would like to see us load some of these things with wood products and send them back home. Great use for it. So, hey, we start talking about this and we get excited and say, hey, we've got this, Camp Navajo. We can bring it in by rail. We can, put these cants in there, the chips, the shavings, sawdust, those torrefied briquettes. By having all of these different options here, we can load some with one product, another with some different product, and then ship them by rail. So it's like, hey, this is looking pretty good. Let's talk to somebody about this. So let's just call up the company and have them send it to us, because we're right on this transcontinental line here, and we have all those containers end up going back through town and end up here, and about 60% of them are empty. So it's like, let's just give them a call and see what's going on. Well, that's when we found out the logistics of the railroad and how these intermodal containers actually get home. So we have lots of talks, and the railroad's like, well, we're not really interested in that. It's just not a business model that we see as being even the least bit feasible, because what happens is those shipping containers get loaded, say in Chicago, and intermodal, they load the whole train full of those and they don't stop until they get to Long Beach, where they get loaded on the ship. They don't load more or anything like that. It's a full unit train and it doesn't stop. You see that advertisement that's for the air conditioners, the train, that it's hard to stop a train. Well, this was hard to stop a train. But with a lot of community support and a lot of talking with different folks and bringing in the shipping container companies, Hyundai was really interested in, we don't want to have these shipping containers coming home empty. Let's see if we can load them up. So a lot of support from the county, from the state, from support for that. So the railroads, that's really what we want. We can send wood gondolas. We can even load coal cars with these and send them over there. But the price, that's really not what we would do. And so they finally agreed to, yes, all right, let's do a one-time project with this, more to just appease us than anything else. But they were also kind of curious as to whether they could make this work. So we talked to Camp Navajo and they were all for it. The Northern Arizona Council of Military Affairs, we had originally planned, we've got the transcontinental line coming in, we're going to back in close to here, but the railroad, there was some infrastructure issues, so they worked out a deal where they could put it in here, and then we just drive the containers out, offload them, load them up with chips, and then load them back onto the train. It was a little bit further, but they helped us figure it out. So now it was time to deliver logs. Boy, we've got this thing and we're going for it. So we started loading logs up in Flagstaff, the Chimney Springs area. The Nature Conservancy had these logs, and so they helped us, with the contractor and all that sort of stuff. Richard Halliburton, that was up there in Flagstaff. So he loaded them up and sent them on their way. We got them to Camp Navajo. They offloaded them into different piles out there on how we thought we were going to do this. And there were some lessons learned in actually how you want to pile these things to make it easier to chip. But we didn't know that at the time. And we started bringing in the equipment. Yeah, these are larger pieces of equipment. We typically don't mobilize these things that often, but this one came from Colorado. We did have a local loader that we don't see these too often, but it was available, so we used it. But the big one was, holy cow, look at the axle on that truck. This one came out of Texas, and this is key to the whole operation. It's the rough terrain container handler, otherwise what we call a wretch. And then the train arrives. So we have all these containers. This is actually the front end of the train. I would have thought that it had been at the back, but it was at the front. And so they drive it on in. And what happens is they have to drop the train there on the tracks, move our containers in, back it on in, set all the brakes, go back out, and then air up that entire train again. Well, it took 2 hours to do this little operation. Meanwhile, the transcontinental line gets shut down. Well, there's a train going through every 15 minutes going on that transcontinental line. So this was a big deal for the railroad to allow us to do this. So we'll have some lessons learned on this coming up, but we're really appreciative of Burlington Northern for letting us do this. So they agreed to this one-time test. It was a mix of what we call the double stack containers and single containers that are out there. We offloaded them one day, so we took a day to offload them. We had about 6 days where we were going to offload, load, and then call up BNSF. They could come and grab the train and then need it to bring it to the Port of Long Beach. So we offload the containers. One of the things that BNSF requested was that we put bulkheads in the back. And we really weren't thinking about doing the bulkheads, but we were really appreciative actually that we actually did it because we could load more chips in that container when it got all done. So there's our bulkhead that we had in the back end. And then we moved the containers into place. And this is kind of like the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears, where we originally planned on having just set them on the ground and load the chips in there, but the chute that was on the chipper was a little higher than this. It's normally used to fill chip vans, so it's on a trailer. Well, we thought, okay, so they're too low. Well, let's double stack them and see what happens there. Well, that didn't work because now it was too high. But this is the sweet spot where we brought in some trailers and set them on the flatbed trailers. It was the perfect height. So Goldilocks and the three containers, I guess is what we'll call that lesson. So here's our chipper, and you see the bottom one here that we're chipping and blowing it into that container. See how those chips, where they would have flowed, I guess that's a word. They would have flowed out the back end if that bulkhead hadn't been in there. The other one you see is they have a log loader loading the chips or loading the logs into the chipper. And see how it's kind of kicked off at an angle there where we had piled the things before. That really wasn't a good setup for loading them in here. You kind of needed an angle to get into that chute. So that was one of the lessons that we learned out there. And then moisture content. You know, we're really looking for 25% moisture. And this is one lesson that was kind of an interesting land on doing this. It took us a long time to get this project up and rolling. And so they kept, the Forest Service allowed us to keep the logs out there a little longer. The Nature Conservancy kind of kept them out there for us. So again, we're really appreciative of our partners out there. But we eventually did it, but it took a year to do this. And we're thinking, oh, these logs are going to be really dry. But we did have a wet winter, but our moisture content came back when we put it in the oven. We're getting like 38% moisture content. And it's like, no way, how can this be? And so I did it once and we remeasured them and I did it twice. And after the third time that I put these samples in the oven, it's like, well, maybe these are that wet. So we went out there and we did some destructive samples out there in the woods, and we cut cookies off the logs every 2 feet. And sure enough, yeah, the logs are a little drier at the end, but as you get into the middle of that log, 40, 50% moisture content. So it's the bark, that moisture in the decks, and I think that there's areas that we can look at this a little more and see if it was just a wet winter or what was going on out there. So another area that I think we can look at. When we finish putting the chips in, we would, there's a weight sensor on that, the wrench there, that equipment that we're moving this with, so it weighs the container. And so we can't be over, we're trying to maximize our weight there. Sometimes we got close to maximizing that weight at 55 tons. But we'd weigh it, we'd close the doors, and we'd seal it with the record on here, the shipping container, the tare weight of the container, the weight of the container with the chips, and then we can calculate the weight of the chips. Off of that, where that container goes on the train, whether it goes on the top, whether it goes on the bottom, all this information is critical both to exporting these things and loading them on the train. So that was another. Train gets overloaded, they put all this information in there, and they'll come back and say, oh, you've overloaded this particular box on this particular car in this location, so they'll have us swap it out. So here we're moving those containers back onto the rail car, stacking them on there. There were several lessons that we did learn from this, that in order to do this, the railroad company is going to require that full unit train to be delivered. Like I say, they don't stop until they get to Long Beach. Well, they're willing to stop along the way, but it has to have that whole unit train, and then you have to have a whole unit train continue on down the line there. So that's like 220 containers a week that would need to be coming in on a unit train. That could be they wanted it every week, but it could be like every other week to start with. So we'll just do every other week for right now, just to get started. But that's 26 weeks a year, 220 containers, 5,700 containers per year. A lot of containers going there. But when we look at this, kind of the interesting part we're finding in Arizona is that one of these containers equals about an acre of treatment. So we're looking at 20 to 25 tons per acre. That's 5,720 acres treated per year on like a bi-weekly basis there. So we can, it's kind of interesting. We can definitely get rid of a lot of material this way. The other one is track improvement. So here's the transcontinental line going down the way. Here's the deal into Camp Navajo where they would come off and then they'd come down through here. Well, there's no way that we can do a whole unit train on that. So it's going to take 8,000 feet of track kind of going down parallel. There is room like right down here next to it in the right-of-way area. But the other one is electronic switches with that many loads going through there. The folks in Texas said, we don't want our folks out there manually flipping the switches. We want to do it from the base office. So coming in and going out, they don't want to mess around with traffic, and it's a safety issue. But all that's like $5 million just to do the railroad tracks here. You also have other infrastructure needs, such as an all-weather pad that you can run this wrench around on. Talking a lot of weight on that. So it needs to be like a 12-inch reinforced pad, areas to bring the train in, offload then the equipment that it's going to take to do this. So there is going to be a significant investment in this. However, looking at, the price of a new mill compared to the price of doing here, to the cost of doing this, I'm not a businessman, but it's something definitely to look at to see if you can amortize these fixed costs over the life of that shipping plant. And there's definitely demand over there. The other lesson that we learned is the railroad. So if we have $40 a ton, kind of a medium cost for these to load and chips into the containers at Camp Navajo, that leaves about $40 a ton to get it to the port of Long Beach, where they're willing to pay $80 per ton there at the port. So that only leaves $40 more for the railroad. So on the bottom of this graph here, I have the cost of the the per container cost for railroad transportation. And when we're doing a small project, things like that, costs were like $1,500 to $2,000 per container just to do the railroad shipping. What we need to do is we need to get that cost down below 900 actually to make this this work. And you do that by consistency and volume. So that's really important for the railroad, and then you'll start to see these costs go down. As we said, these railroad transportation, the logistics, that is definitely something that we're going to need to look at. The ocean cost from the Port of Long Beach to South Korea is only $20 per ton to get those containers onto the ship and off to South Korea, which is, it seems like crazy, but you have a lot of those containers on those ships, and each container kind of spreads that value out. So that's why you have such a low cost. Ocean shipping, marine transportation, it's incredibly interesting to see the low costs associated with units on that, just because it's, you can amortize that out, all the costs out over a a lot of volume. Now, the average moisture content we said was around 30% there. It could be a challenge to get that down to 25. We're gonna look into that, I'm sure, just to see what it can be. Were we off on our calculations somehow or another? I don't think so. We did it many times. It could have just been a wet year, could have been the bark, could have been shading, something I think we should look at. And then the other thing that we need to do is, if we were to do this, we need to definitely ramp up our operations there. Our forest equipment operators, our truck drivers, workers. We need a lot of trained woods workers to get this volume out of the wood and chipped and ready to go. So Dr. Hahn's citing projects coming up to look at training our workforce. So I think we can look forward to seeing some good stuff coming out of NAU. And as I said before, there's just a ton of folks out there that we'd like to thank on that. Forest Service, our Wood Innovations grant program, helped us a lot. The Department of Forestry and Fire Management, they helped tremendously with our contracting, and they were a funding mechanism for this. It's great working with them. Northern Arizona Military Affairs Council, Coconino County, just to name a few folks out there. I mean, everybody was a huge team effort to make this thing work. So we'd like to thank a lot of people out there. And with that, I think we can open it up to questions. I'm the one that's down here with the big smile on my face after we finished the project. It was a long road in coming. All right.
That's great. Thanks, Jeff. And Han, I don't know if you wanted to add anything, but if anyone has questions, just feel free to unmute yourself and you can go ahead and ask questions. The other thing, in case you came on late, please introduce yourself in the chat box. So thank you.
Okay, so this is Han. I will wait for any questions, and then I add more couple items after that. Any questions?
Han, this is Chris Jones. I guess.
Hello, Chris.
Hi, and Jeff. I guess the question is, what's next? It was a big effort. Good things happening with it. What do we hope to see happen?
So I can say two things. First thing is that we are now exploring who might be interested in taking over this idea to make this idea becomes a reality, and running the full scale shipping operation using railroad and the marketing to South Korea, Japan, and China. That idea is still being developed. There are a couple of folks here in Arizona interested in working on that. And we are also trying to assist them to find some right spot to implement this idea. One location, obviously we did is Camp Navajo. Currently, there's some big momentum going on of the shifting the ownership of this Camp Navajo property, about 2,800 acres, over to state of Arizona from Department of Defense. So that bill is on the Congress, and the Senator's office, Department of the Defense, they are working together on that issue. If that happens, I think that there's the county, the Belmont, and the city of Belmont, and the city of Flagstaff, and a lot of industry folks. They actually interested in building a business cluster at the Camp Navajo, along with this chip and ship operation. So those things that still being discussed, and a lot of people seem very interested on this one. So that idea one going on. Second item at NAU, we are doing the follow-up chip and ship project. Basically, we are currently mapping out all the railroad networks throughout Western United States. And then once I have that information in place, then we are trying to connect the dots between suppliers and potential markets within the Western United States, and potentially the 40 markets in Asia. And then along with that idea, on the map of the Western United States, we are trying to identify the hot spots for developing some business cluster or chip and ship operation site. So that is something we like to, we'll be working on over the next year. So that's another follow-up project we are currently working on.
Well, congratulations. It's an exciting project, and it's exciting to see it move along. And Jeff, and the slides were great. On my computer, they're really clear. So it looks very good presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's nice when technology works for you.
We had a question in the chat box from Jeff Ravage. He's asking if there's been any energy analysis run. He's looking at the BTUs of the dry chips and how much energy is expended transporting and shipping a container.
As far as the energy content, we did. Apparently there is a requirement have a minimum level of energy content on a weight basis when South Korean companies trying to import wood chips from other countries. So we send about 20 kilogram, actually 20 kilogram of wood chips sent out to South Korea, and so they did all the energy content analysis along with some the energy property analysis, and that the South Korean company person told us that the ponderous pine wood chips produced here in Arizona way than need as a minimum. We don't know the number, but they love the Arizona the ponderous pine wood chips. Especially they thinking that because of the weather here in Arizona, very dry, it's much more logistically, it's much more doable operationally compared to some other places like Western Oregon and Washington, California.
And then if I could add on to that one a little bit there, the nice thing about with these shipping containers is that they're already traveling home empty. So the train's still coming down from Chicago, still going to LA, still getting loaded onto the ship and sent over there. What this is allowing us is we're just making a little break there and we're filling them up with content rather than them going home empty. So that's one of the really nice things about using shipping containers. So.
Great. I see one more question right now from Ted Ralston, I believe up in Idaho, and he's wondering about if there's any concerns about transporting insects, or if that's pretty well dealt with by the age of the slash or the.
Very good. I should have looked at my notes that we talked about last night there, Dr. Hahn, was that yes, we did look at the fumigation side of things, and not surprisingly, the Camp Navajo was not very excited when we said, well, we might need to fumigate these. And they said, you want to do what? You want to bring chemicals onto my base and you want to kill some stuff? I don't think so. But what we did was we shipped them over and the Korean government just quarantined them over there, and they did the fumigation in South Korea. So it ended up costing about $100 per container. And I just wish that problem away. And but it's something maybe we want to look at here. Maybe it's cheaper for us to do it here in Arizona. But for this pilot project anyway, when we sent 60 containers, I couldn't find anybody that was interested in just in coming out and fumigating these. But like I say, we wished it away and sent it over there. Han sent over this little picture of a banner. I have no idea what it said, that was strapped across the doors, but it looked to me like "do not open this container" type of a symbol on that. So yes, bugs can be an issue, but we took care of that with fumigation.
Did you guys look at that or do any tests on that to like see to look for bugs and get a sense of what you had?
Right, we didn't. We just looked at the rules, and the rules for South Korea said that everything coming in did need to be fumigated there. There are, if you take products that were already heat treated or something like that, and you chip those up, those didn't need to be fumigated over there because they've already been heat treated. But you just have to provide the manifest, the loading receipt. I forget exactly what it was that you had to send over there, but it's evidence that it was heat treated over on this end before it got into its final product. But having bark on it and having the wood, they said you had to fumigate.
Great. And I put Ted in Idaho, which isn't true. I believe he's still in Arizona.
So I'd like to add two more things here. One is the wood chips. You know, as you probably would know, that the log export from national forest is not allowed. That's against the law. However, wood chips, that is considered as a product. So you can ship the wood chips, sawdust, kent, some processed product that made the source out of the wood from the national forest can be exported. That's not a problem. So that was good to know. Saw log out of the national forest is not allowed to export. Need to be processed here in the United States.
And also the size of the cans. If you get over 8 3/4 inches or so on any of the one face, it needs to be smaller than that. So yeah, part of the export laws.
Cool. The second item I want to mention, there is a really good, huge marketing opportunity in other countries, foreign countries. As an example, here in South Korea, this particular company is looking for about a supply of 500,000 tons of wood chips from Arizona. They can handle more than 500,000 tons, but they recognize that there's some the limitations of how much we can send from here. But they can take everything what we can send over there. So that's how much hungry that they you know about the forest products there. Now this 500,000 in chips they are interested in buying wood chips, sawdust they use as animal bedding or making pulp and paper, and the fiberboard. So the sawdust and the Kent and some other wood pellets. So they like to import if all those products are available through rail. So when Jeff mentioned about the 220 containers every other week, that's a loss of volume that you're talking about. But it doesn't have to be one product. It can be a mix of a lot of different train 220 container every other week, or even better if we can make it every week. So so what I'm trying to say here is there is good market potential. There's a good demand for a wide range of different forest products in other countries.
That's great. I think that answers a part of another question that Jeff Ravitch had in Colorado. He was asking about kind of more carbon sequestering products on the market end. And it sounds like some of those, the paper pulp and animal bedding, would be more of a carbon sequestered market. Was there anything else there that you guys had in terms of products that were engineered woods or that would sequester the carbon?
That one I can answer. The company in South Korea, when they bring the chips, one of the things they making out of that wood chips is OSB. That certainly can be used as a construction material and that would sequester carbon. What else are they making? They can make a pulp and paper product out of that one. They also making MDF product too, so it can be used as a furniture and some other light load construction material. So MDF or OSB they can make out of wood chips, so which can help the sequester the carbon.
Right, and we looked at these shipping containers coming in and then going off to Long Beach, but there's also rails that go down into Mexico, things like that, that they are also interested in making MDF items. So there's been a history of mills in Mexico requesting wood chips at times. So interesting things out there.
Yeah, at the speaking about the carbon, carbon sequestering, the reason that the companies and the government in South Korea are so really interested in, so motivated to import the wood chips from other countries, because they're apparently struggling with the international agreement of providing the carbon credit. Apparently, South Korea is I think a number 8 or 9th country in the world of the polluting the air, because a very high industrialized country. They're supposed to give a lot of the carbon credit, the carbon commitment, carbon sequester commitment that to the international agreement. And so one of the way they try to do is trying to replace the fossil-based energy into more renewable biomass energy idea. That is one of the big driver of the demanding of the wood, demanding for wood chips from other countries.
Great questions.
Becca, did we cover all the questions in the text boxes?
Yeah, we've covered everything from chat. So I guess, if anybody had anything now, or unmute yourself and ask any final questions, and then Anne, you can move us forward. And Anne did mention in the chat box, if you guys missed it, that we are recording this call. I'm hoping that my unstable internet connection doesn't leave very much of the audio garbled. There was a little bit that was garbled on my end, but I could understand everything. So we will share the recording of this presentation in the wood utilization podio space. And if you're not in that space, just drop your email in the chat so we can make sure to share that with you if you want it.
Very good. And one last item, there is a report that we have at ERI up on the website on this project as well. So some written items on there.
Yeah, there's a lot more. Good. That's a good point, Jeff. So we do have about 30-page full report. That's a public domain report available. So I can send that report. Actually, Ann has that report, right, Ann?
Yes,
So,
and actually, when I did the announcement, Han, I attached it to the announcement.
okay.
So, but if anybody needs that again, I'm happy to send it to them. So are there any other questions? We've got a few more minutes, and just feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
Yeah, I have a quick question, and maybe this is already covered. I'm sorry, I missed part of the earlier parts of it. But I was wondering, Han, if you haven't already talked about this, if you talk about how the price of wood chips is able to compete with some of the other regional sources in South Korea, like palm kernel shells, and the places where South Korea is already buying their biomass from, which are, you know, these low value, high volume products from neighboring countries.
Yeah. So as a good example, I can mention about wood pellet. So about 80% of the wood pellet coming into South Korea comes from Vietnam. At the cost of probably 2/3 of the price of the here in North America. So the South Korea is getting the wood pellets, most of the wood pellet import coming from Vietnam, but at the same time, the South Korean government, the companies, they are trying to get the more wood pellet from Canada and the United States. So the reason they are doing it, even though more expensive here and coming from the Canada and the United States, their demand is way more than what's available. The one thing. So that they're trying to really ramp up of their production of the biomass energy in South Korea. A second thing, they're thinking about the quality. So we had actually good calculation. If you look at the net energy content, at the also ash content and the shipping cost, all that combined together, even though the cost of the price of the wood pellets coming from Canada and the U.S. is more expensive coming to the Korea, the final output cost, dollar per BTU, comes out actually very close. So that's why I think they did that kind of study within the company in South Korea. So they are interested in more. I mean, they importing the wood pellets from the South Canada and the U.S. is not that actually quite more expensive than what they're importing from Vietnam in terms of the total dollar per BTU cost for them. So good question.
Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Anybody?
I had one more question. I was curious about the markets in Mexico that Jeff was mentioning. Are those going to be included in the kind of Western U.S. exports to markets study that ERI is working on?
Well, as far as that's not something, anything we like to explore any options when we're trying to connect the dots between between supply and the markets. So obviously Mexico is a kind of a natural choice for us to explore as far as exporting the marketing from here to Arizona and New Mexico and Colorado, or from here to southern border of this country.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Well, thanks, Jeff and Han, really appreciate the effort. And I know a lot of people were really looking forward to this presentation.